All right, so today is June 6th. This is 1 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the Kubernetes Cloud Provider Working Group. So before we start today, I did want to give an update on SIG Cloud Provider. So SIG Cloud Provider was approved. And so right now I'm working with Caleb to kind of work out some of the admin work, like creating a Slack channel, the mailing list, and whatnot. But probably starting either next week or the week after, we're probably going to switch schedules where we're going to have 1 hour of bi-weekly meetings instead of 30-minute weekly meetings. And so the initial chairs for SIG Cloud Provider will be myself, Chris from OpenStack, and Jago from Google. And so there's a lot of things that we wanted to address as part of the SIG. So we'll probably start tackling those next week whenever we have all these things finalized. So that involves the conversation around how do we support new providers, what are the requirements for those new providers, and all that stuff. Anyone have questions for that or anything to say?
I just have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's all right. I was just going to say there's also a conflict with the SIG Cloud Provider, and we got some, Cluster API. That's a working group, right? Mm-hmm. It's a working group, and that there are some overlapping folks there, and so we may have to send out a schedule and figure out if there are more appropriate times. So those surveys are always a little messy, but please bear with us on that. Go ahead, Chris, sorry.
I was about to say that I don't know how many people are going to be at DockerCon next week, but that may conflict with the meeting next week on starting some of this up. I know that I'll be there. But if there's anything that you need help in setting up the machinery for this, I'm happy to do that. So just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out.
I'm happy to help as well. I mean, I've been through this with SIGVMR like recently, so I'm fresh. So please reach out if you need anything.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out whenever we need kind of extra hands to get things moving. Cool. Okay, yeah, so I did want to talk briefly about new providers. I know, so we'll probably hash this out in more detail in the first SIG meeting, but there have been requests from some of the folks from Alibaba Cloud for the new provider repos. So pretty much the idea I have right now for kind of pushing this is to just go through the standard KEP process. So since new providers will be sub-projects under SIG Cloud Provider, once a cloud provider satisfies those requirements we have, we're just going to ask them to create a KEP under SIG Cloud Provider, and then once the KEP is approved, we can kind of start creating those repositories for them. Caleb, did you want to comment on the KEP process at all, or does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I can definitely help in reviewing any of the KEPs for any of the other providers that come in. The KEP process, just in a few words, is a evolution of the design proposal process that we want to apply to changes to Kubernetes or the community more broadly. Okay, cool.
So yeah, we'll kind of figure out details for that in the SIG meeting. Okay, so end-to-end tests. Is Ben in this call at all? Okay, no, he's not. Okay, so I was working with Ben.
Hi. Sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry, hi, I am in the call.
Oh, hey. Yeah, so Ben gave me an update yesterday about end-to-end tests. So essentially before, we were blocked by the fact that we can only, like a provider has to create their own GCS bucket and have it publicly readable for us to actually update test grid results or update end-to-end conformance tests to test grid. So it seems like Ben made some changes so that there's kind of a consolidated way to do this without having providers create their own GCS buckets. Ben, did you want to give us a quick update on that?
So just pretty brief version. I've got something worked out that we seem okay with on our end, where if you contact us, we'll create a bucket and we'll set up a service account that has credentials to create things in it, and then work with you to set up the automation to actually upload to it. And I've just linked, there's a PR, I'm just waiting for an LGTM. It seems like it's mostly been reviewed. It's got hopefully pretty extensive docs over everything and points of contact, as well as a guide for any of the members of our team on how to set that up.
Okay. Okay, so it seems like the new process is, so it's up to the provider to kind of actually run their tests, so they can use COPS or kind of whatever they want. And then once they have the test results for the conformance test, they need a bucket, so they have to contact you directly for the bucket. And then you're going to provide them with the credentials to upload those results.
Right. You can either create a bucket and then just write a PR to test grid, or you can contact me or any of the other members of my team. I've got a contact point in there, and we'll set up a bucket that you can use for CI conformance results. And then we can help you with configuring the dashboards and that sort of thing. And there are some documents on like how you would set up all that. We've also gone the route with a few things where instead you can set up the CI that we use for everything is available. So if you want to completely circumvent this route, you can instead work with us to integrate your provider into kubetest, and we can set up CI that takes Kubernetes, builds it, deploys it to your provider, and uploads the results using the existing buckets.
Okay, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. Does that sound good to everyone else? Okay. Cool. Thanks a lot, Ben. I was really dreading having to do work to kind of make the test grid S3 compatible, but I think this is a lot easier for us for next steps.
Yeah, so if anyone could take a look at that and just please give me feedback on anything else that's missing from the docs, I'm happy to update or add any features to the tooling that we've provided. S3 compatibility is something we'd like long-term, but probably not in the works as easily. But other tooling around using the GCS or making it easier for you guys should be something I can work on.
Yeah, it seems like longer term making it more generic. I mean, it feels like we're going to have a lot of providers coming in, and if there are 40 individual buckets, it feels like a lot of work for you.
It's not actually much work, and I mean, so longer term test grid itself is intended to be fully open sourced and running from open source. But for the moment, it's a tool that was pulled internally, and they're having a bit of a time disentangling all of that. And the internals are very familiar to how files are at Google and not easily pointed at something else.
Do you have any advice on how sorry about the construction noise, about how the bucket should be consumed and frequency of log rotation or how frequently test results are reported? Like, I want to make sure that we have guidelines so that we're not abusing resources, by pushing too much data or.
So hopefully this outlines a little bit in the docs, but basically test grid expects sort of like an individual directory for each run. And if we're worried about like rotation or something, we'll just put a TTL on the bucket. I think our TTL right now is pretty generous. It's something like 3 months, but it's not really a big concern compared to the rest of the cost of running Kubernetes' like test infrastructure. GCS storage is pretty minimal.
Okay, cool. Okay, so next on the list is Walter's proposal to. So Walter's proposal is talking about kind of how we're going to move forward with building the CCM for all the entry providers and what migration looks like. So I think in last week's meeting we talked about breaking it down a little bit. So the first thing that we could do the first thing we could do at the very least, which seems like a pretty easy win, is to move all the provider code entry into staging directory entry. That gives kind of that way we can have people vendor in that staging directory and kind of have one place to change code, and then we can kind of swap over in the future. And the reason why we want a staging directory is just so we can kind of signal to the community that we're going to want to move that code out. So Federico was working on creating a KEP for this. Is he in here? Is he in this call?
Hang on, no, we're not muted.
We're gonna want their here now. Hey guys, sorry, just back from vacation.
Hey, how was your vacation?
Oh, beautiful. I just spent 2 weeks in a small tropical island.
Nice.
So as he catches breath, what I can say is, as introduction, the idea I discussed with Caleb and I was going to discuss with Walter today was to update the existing KEP and, propose the technical steps to move all the code to staging. That's one. And on the other hand, what I can say is that the internal progress for Google owns implementation of that is moving forward. It was a bit slow last week because it was out, but we have a number of meetings laid out with the different teams, the node team and the networking team to solve our internals there. So that is moving forward too. So now he catch his breath.
Yep. So were there any questions? I mean, is this just the KEP, or is this also the other proposal that I sent out?
This is the building CCM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The building CCM proposal.
Yeah, this is how to markdownify that and contribute it to GitHub so that it's not lost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I one of my goals for today was going to be see if there was any more feedback and then start the process of prepping it for addition to GitHub, and then beginning with those first steps if everyone is good with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the big thing is stuff like do the build steps, the new make targets, and the moves of all of the source code, so that we can properly set up the dependencies make sense to everyone.
And related to that, Nishi from AWS made us aware of a pull request for the AWS cloud provider that follows the same or addresses the same challenges laid out in the proposal.
Yeah, I can look into the agenda.
Cool. I think Justin had an update on that earlier today. I saw a comment in the.
Yeah, we actually discussed that in SIG AWS on Friday, and I think the general idea was basically we should proceed in that repo because it doesn't really cost us anything. It doesn't really commit us to anything, and shouldn't interfere too much with the staging work. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's like 2 or 3 files and then a huge set of vendors that add up to like 1.2 million lines, but it's only like 3 files of actual code. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. I will try and get the MD done today, and then I'll start proceeding on the fun of moving things into staging.
Yeah, so I think to kind of keep all the providers happy, we should. So when we create the KEP under SIG Cloud Provider, we probably want a sign off from at least one of the leads from every provider SIG. Just so like once we have their thumbs up, we can just go ahead and move everything to staging.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yep.
There was also a discussion about raising this with the SIG release. And Caleb, I don't know, did you get to do that last time around?
I did not.
Okay, just forward-looking, making sure that we have a plan for how this all gets assembled later and has a reasonable path for end users and doesn't become too complicated would be really useful.
I don't know if it's in the doc, but Bazel has the ability to make packages private, which is basically the sort of first step we do before we move things into staging. We basically make sure that nothing depends on it that we don't know about. So I don't know if that's already in the doc, but that shouldn't have any real impact on anyone. Like when a PR goes in, it doesn't break anyone. The PR won't go in until it succeeds, and then it will be. So that should be 0 impact, as it were.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about this step where we just move where the code is. I'm more worried about longer term when the binaries are more distributed and how and where you collect those binaries to get it to run somewhere. And that becomes a new and different world than we live in today. And I just want to make sure we're forward looking on that part of it.
When it comes time, I'm happy to do my best to explain what ZML Zach set up for COPS, which is sort of like multiple watermarks that proceed so that no one repo can break another repo, but they can all be tested together.
So that sounds
Clever.
nice.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear about that.
Chris has some information about how the Zool folks do that for the OpenStack as well.
Sweet. Okay, yeah. So I think we have a pretty good idea of how to move forward there. So last thing on the agenda is scheduling, which we already talked about. So Fabio made a good recommendation. I'll probably do a poll on the working group channel to see what time works best for everyone. And then I'll see what other SIGs, like when other SIGs have meetings, just so we're not overlapping with other SIGs.
There are very few slots left in the
Yeah.
especially morning. It's a busy time.
Yeah.
6 p.m. on Friday. But yeah, okay, yeah. I'll get around to that this week. I think that's it for the agenda. Is there anything else anyone want to talk about?
I have one small further note on the test grid stuff. As a bit of a further carrot, we've been working with the Zool OpenStack folks to kind of figure out this process, and they've been using one of the buckets we provide now. Since their signal has been so clean, we've decided to add the GCE and the OpenStack signals to the release dashboards, and those are actually is part of the blocking release signal for the Kubernetes release team. So if you'd like to help make sure that conformance tests are actually passing when we release a release, then you should get on this dashboard and use your results.
I'm sorry, I left my dance hall air horn at home.
That's excellent. Great job, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to add to the agenda is I want to kind of say thank you to Andrew for pushing so many of these efforts forward and for making this a reality. I know that when we started this a little while ago, he came in to say how can I be involved with this, and demonstrating so much leadership has been great to watch, and I think that everybody's benefiting from Andrew's leadership. So thanks for pushing this forward.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, so I think that's it. So I'll see everyone next week, or the first SIG cloud provider meeting.
Excellent. Take
Awesome.
care, gang.
Yeah.